Good afternoon and welcome to the WAVY Digital Desk. I'm your host, Sarah Good. Today we're going to be talking all about oyster restoration. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation is offering up a program for new oyster gardeners. They're seeking people to help, whether that's on their own pier, their own dock, or in community ones. We're going to find out more about the program and how you can get involved today. Well, I want to introduce Jessica Letzo and Jackie Shannon with us today. Thank you guys both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Do you want to get started by just telling us a little bit about, what your roles are as, oyster restoration specialists and what you do with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation?
Yeah, definitely. So my role is the Virginia Oyster Restoration Specialist, as you mentioned, and I have the amazing opportunity to run our volunteer oyster gardening program. I also, work hand in hand with the rest of the team for any large scale restoration that we do. We have a really phenomenal shell recycling program that one of our other colleagues runs. So we're kind of like as Jackie always says, a small team with big dreams.
Absolutely. And Jackie, same thing for you?
Yes, I'm the Virginia Oyster Restoration Manager, so I get to work alongside of Jess and a couple other colleagues. We are a small team. We're very volunteer driven. Volunteers are really the boots on the ground that help us accomplish our annual goals of getting millions of oysters out into our waterways. We focus on large scale restoration, usually in one tributary or river system at a time, but oyster gardening is a wonderful way to get hundreds of citizens growing oysters in creeks and streams that we aren't targeting for restoration that still need those water quality improvements that are so important.
And can you all tell us a little bit? I know that people very familiar with this area obviously know why oysters are so important to our waterways, but just serves as a great reminder. Can you just talk about why this oyster restoration is so important?
Sure. So oysters, one of my favorite sound bites about oysters is they're like the living water treatment plants of the Chesapeake Bay. So the cumulative impact of getting millions of oysters out annually is very significant in terms of helping to clean and filter the water. They're also wonderful habitat for hundreds of other species, and they're also very commercially valuable too. Virginia's seafood industry lands about $1 billion annually of seafood products, and oysters represent about $60 million of that. So a really big part of the pie in terms of sustaining an economy and striking a balance between the conservation efforts.
And I think it's really interesting that you all obviously want the community to get involved. You want people to participate and be a part of this because obviously the effort is large and can't just be done with one organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And this program, we run this oyster gardening program, but there are a lot of other really great partners that do a lot of other awesome programs as well. And as you mentioned, this is just such a great way for the community members to actually have hands-on experience with the waterway. A lot of times people eat the oysters, but they maybe don't know how much habitat they provide or how much water they're filtering. So it kind of really just connects those dots of almost that holistic cycle, as Jackie just mentioned, they're extremely important, culturally, commercially, economically. So it just really just creates that circle in people's minds and brings it all together for a lot of people.
And I want to talk more about the program. I'm going to pull some video up on screen here. Some of it's just general work in the past that, we've covered, but then there's also going to be some video talking about the oyster gardening program that you all have run. I think, for people who aren't familiar with the program, you're looking for new gardeners, right? So you don't need to know exactly what this is or be an expert at all, in terms of knowing oysters, understanding them. That's what this program is for, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We hold events all across the, Virginia watershed. And as a new gardener, when you sign up, you attend a 45-minute seminar where we dive really deep into why they're important and what you're going to be doing to take care of them and the amount of time you're going to need to spend. And then, after that year of taking care of those animals, they come back to us and, you just saw a video of volunteers, what we call planting them onto sanctuary reefs. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of like harbor a safe area for these oysters to grow for that first year so that they have, likely a really high survival chance once they hit those sanctuary reefs.
And I think I was surprised to know, so the process does take a year. So can you talk a little bit about, what the person's responsible for, what the week to week looks like?
Yeah, so when you sign up to be an oyster gardener, you're taking home live animals. So that's why the seminar is very important, because we obviously want everyone to feel really prepared with what they're getting into. But in the summertime, it really just involves, hitting the dock that you're growing at least once a week or once every 2 weeks, mainly just because the cages get really fouled up because the water's a little warmer. So there's a lot of algae and just fouling involved with it. So you're basically cleaning that cage to make sure that there's good water flow, so that the oysters can eat, because that's how they're going to eat, is by filtering that water through themselves. And so if the cage wires are blocked, then they're most likely not getting enough food. Another big reason that they need to go check them is because they create almost like a mini reef while they're growing there. So there's a lot of other critters that kind of get involved in your situation. So sometimes, especially this time of year, you'll have juvenile blue crabs crawl in and then they'll molt and then they can't get back out. So when they're molting, they're obviously getting a little bit bigger, just to kind of explain that a little better. So they're getting stuck in there. So, it's a good thing because you get involved and you get to see all these critters, but you're really just trying to make sure that your oysters are safe and able to eat, and keeping the cages clean. In the winter, it falls off. You don't really need to go that much. It's once a month. So you do get a good break once the weather cools off. So it's a heavier lift in the warmer months, but that's when you want to be outside on a dock anyways. So it works out.
Right, absolutely. And, I think the maintenance part, especially if you're lucky enough to have a backyard with it, but you all are also offering community spots. Can you talk a little bit about that process, being able to participate even if maybe you're not right on the waterway?
So we're really, really proud, and we work really hard to make sure that this is accessible for everyone. And so we have amazing partners with City Parks and Rec. We have amazing partners with local marinas, to ensure that people who don't have that private water access can grow at a location that, we work really hard to try to make it within a 30-minute drive for the gardener. So that's something that we're really working on growing even further this year. So if there's any marinas or waterfront properties listening, we're always happy to partner with you to offer up spaces for our gardeners to be able to grow. And we have a lot of public spaces that have been doing this alongside us for years and years, and they get very into it as well and very invested in it. So it's a great way for businesses even to get involved in it.
And the goal that you all have listed that you're partnering with, I believe it's the Chesapeake Oyster Alliance. The goal is 10 billion new oysters in the Bay by 2025. So obviously we need all the hands we can to tackle that.
Yes, we set a lofty goal alongside the Chesapeake Oyster Alliance, and we are well on the way to that goal, but every oyster counts, even if it's just a few. So it's going to add to that number, and we're getting there. I think our last numbers were at about 6 billion. So we're getting there, obviously, with the help of a lot of other partners. So.
And do you know how many farmers exist right now? Or I guess just said farmers, but I meant gardeners. Gardeners exist right now in the program, or people that have stepped up already this year?
So we have just under 700 individual oyster gardeners, and we have about 400 families or groups growing together. So that just kind of breaks down the numbers a little bit for you. And, some of those groups are school groups, or they're corporate groups that have like their own public community gardens that they grow. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get friends, family, coworkers involved.
And where are these oyster sanctuaries that the oysters are going to once they're full grown in that year?
We work really hard to make sure that the oysters that the gardeners grow are placed onto reefs in the rivers that the gardeners are growing them in. So there are state-run sanctuaries, there are sanctuary reefs that we've built all across the watershed. And so we just really determine, based on where they're growing, which reefs we're going to put them on.
Interesting. So it's just about sort of how it looks next year when you all are doing the pickup, if you will, or when you're actually in the process?
Yeah, I'll let Jackie maybe weigh in a little more on like exact locations where we plant, because she's been with the program for a really long time. But we do, just like I said, say we're having an event in Norfolk, we're going to plant in a river in Norfolk. So Luckily, there is so much restoration in Virginia that it gives us a lot of options for reefs to put these oysters on.
Exactly, and I think that helps people stay invested in the program, knowing that the oysters that they've been growing in their neighborhood or their community are gonna stay within their local waterways, so all those good environmental benefits also stay localized too.
Right, because you're seeing actually it work and develop in your own backyard. And I think, we're showing different footage here, I know, but I think one project was, people in Portsmouth came together to put oysters on a wall, I believe, or, there's different situations like that. Obviously, because they're not just important to the bay, also all the tributaries and all of the, offshoots and things like that. But here, I guess, looking at this footage, I mean, it does seem like everybody's having a good time doing this and getting involved, and you all pitch too, obviously, that kids can get involved. This is a great hands-on way to learn about your waterways, learn about what's happening with the bay.
Yes, and the seminars are free to come and listen to if people want to, as Jess said, take a deeper dive into oyster gardening and why it's important. We welcome people to come listen and learn. We have 9 seminars that are scheduled geographically spread out so that we can hopefully get a lot of people involved without them having to drive too far. And they can go on to our website, cdf.org, and search for Virginia oyster gardening, and it lists all of our locations for the workshops. We run those concurrently with the roundups too, so that people who are new gardeners really get to see the program come full circle when they see those 1-year-old adult oysters coming back, so they kind of know what they can expect. So it just becomes a really fun educational event. Even if you decide not to take home oysters, we think there's really something for everyone.
And, how cool to be able to see it, as you said, full circle, but also maybe get some tips from people that have done it in the past.
Exactly. Yeah, the people coming back are the pros. After 1 year, you are a professional oyster gardener. And one of the great things is no matter how large your oyster is after 1 year, it will be mature. So when it goes out onto one of these protected non-harvest reefs, it'll be ready to contribute to future year classes of oysters, in addition to providing awesome habitat and improving water quality. So all of our, as we call them, oyster garden foster parents are creating the babies or the next generation of oysters that will produce lots of babies in their local waterway.
That's great. So, like, obviously the efforts continue and it's sort of exponential that way. I also wanted to say too, in terms of the gear you need, in terms of the supplies, is that something that you all are giving as part of the workshop, or is that something that people need to, go get, in terms of the nets or, the cages and everything like that?
When you register for one of our workshops, you will receive everything you need for the year to grow in terms of, what's containing the oysters and the cages. We do recommend people get their own scrub brushes and gloves and things like that, solely because we've found over the years that gardeners get very particular about what style brush they use to clean their cages. So that kind of we leave up to the gardeners. Some people like soft bristles, some people like the wire brushes. So it's more preferential there, but the oysters and the cages, the line, the zip ties, things like that is all provided when you register for one of the seminars to take home oysters.
And I guess that's another great tip to get from the group, that's done this beforehand, so you're not scrubbing furiously, for no reason. Get those insider tips. But I did want to say, we're giving people fair notice. I think the first one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Saturday, June 8th in the morning. So that's one that people can start looking forward to. And I know that this is not a part of the oyster restoration, but Clean the Bay Day is next weekend, June 1st. And I know that all of this effort is going to, keeping the water clean, keeping, the bay healthy. And so obviously that's something that you all, I'm sure, hold dear too, is making sure that people are keeping their communities clean. It's not enough just to, have oyster gardens. You need to actually be keeping the bay clean as well from, the trash and pollution.
Yes, absolutely. And Clean the Bay Day is always a good time. So.
Well, is there anything else about this program, I guess, that you want people to know, whether they're a first-time participant, whether they're thinking about it, or maybe want to get involved in the future?
I think Jackie really hit it right on the head. I think the biggest thing we like to let people know is you don't have to lock into taking oysters home. You can register as a listen and learn as a guest and come and learn more about it. And then you know, if you are really excited and want to grow when you're leaving, we do try to bring a few extra supplies with us. And sometimes if it's there, you could take them home that day if you do decide to. So, you know, you're not locked in if you're registering as a listen and learn, but it is such a really cool way to just learn more about it and meet some of the people who have been doing it for years and years, and meet some of our phenomenal event volunteers. We have a lot of repeat event volunteers that have actually been in a lot of these clips rolling that literally keep our programs running, and they are the MVPs. So it's just a great way to get involved with your community and learn more about the water that surrounds us.
And that brings me to one more question. You know, if people want to volunteer maybe in a different way, or maybe want to volunteer even extra besides oyster gardening, is there a best way to get in touch with you all to help with, you know, any of your different events or any of your different, you know, activities?
Yes, absolutely. We have on cbf.org, there is a section for a volunteer inquiry. And it's great because you can check all the boxes of things you're interested in. So, you know, if you're not interested at tabling events and you want to be hands-on, you can let them know from the get-go, so you're not getting 1,000 emails about things you're not interested in. But that's probably the most streamlined way to kind of narrow what you're interested in. And then whatever member of our team that you sign up with, you'll get reached out to.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. And I want to say, you know, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, the link is available online that goes directly to sign up for some of these workshops, to find out more information about the oyster gardening program. So you don't have to go far. It's right there. And as they said, you can just show up, you know, for the workshop and just listen in and find out more about the project. But thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for everyone watching. This will be available on WAVY.com, Facebook, and YouTube following the conversation. So go back, hear more about oyster restoration and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Thank you.